I want you to try a little experiment with me. Wherever you are right now, maybe you're driving, maybe you're sitting in your living room or walking the dog, I want you to mentally subtract the trees. Just erase them from the landscape.
It is a stark image to start with.
It really is. I mean, if you're in a city, suddenly the concrete just feels oppressive.
Yeah.
The noise gets louder. The air feels stale.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're out in the country, the horizon just collapses on itself. It looks alien. But the thing is, we usually don't even notice them until they're gone. We suffer from this collective, what is it called? Plant blindness.
Plant blindness.
Yeah.
It's a real cognitive bias. We tend to see plants as a kind of homogeneous green backdrop.
Exactly. The furniture of the planet, pretty, sure, useful for shade, but ultimately they're just background noise.
Right. The wallpaper of the biological world.
Exactly. But today, we're going to tear down that wallpaper. We're going to look at the wall behind it. Because when you actually dive into the literature, and we have, I mean, a massive stack today, everything from high-level botanical taxonomies like Kubitsky's families and genera of vascular plants to cultural histories of wood.
All the way to detailed chemical analyses of bark and leaves. It's a huge field.
It is. And you realize that trees aren't just big plants. They are the silent infrastructure of our entire civilization.
It's a shift in perspective that is honestly long overdue. You know, think back to when you were a kid. Someone hands you a crayon and says, draw a tree.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Oh, that's easy. I draw a brown rectangle for a trunk and a big fluffy green circle on top, the classic lollipop tree.
The lollipop tree. Everybody draws the lollipop tree. And the tragedy is, for most adults, our understanding never really graduates from that brown rectangle and green circle. But the reality, we are looking at these complex hydraulic machines. Oh, absolutely. They're chemical factories that are actively engaging in warfare and, well, medicine. These are organisms that have toppled empires, fueled our own evolution, and are currently on the front lines of climate migration.
That is the mission for this deep dive. We're going to move beyond the lollipop. We're going to deconstruct the biology, the history, and the future of these things we take for granted. And we're going to start with a question that sounds deceptively simple, but according to your notes, is actually a bit of a nightmare. What is a tree?
It's the question that starts bar fights at botany conferences.
I didn't know botanists had bar fights, but I'm intrigued now.
Oh, they do, usually over taxonomy.
Yeah.
See, if I asked you to define a tree, you'd probably give me a functional definition. You'd say, it has a wooden trunk, it has bark, it has leaves, and, you know, it's tall.
Right. It's distinct from a bush or a flower. It's big and woody. Simple.
But big is subjective. Biology doesn't really deal in big. It deals in specifics. And the definition of a tree is surprisingly fluid. It's not an absolute biological truth. It's a human categorization we've imposed on nature. For instance, just take the height threshold.
There's a height threshold, like for a roller coaster. You must be this tall to be a tree.
Precisely.
Oh.
And nobody agrees on the sign. You have one faction of gardeners and horticulturists who draw the line strictly at 13 feet, or roughly 3 meters.
Okay.
If it is 12 feet, 11 inches, that is a shrub. It's a bush. It doesn't get the title.
So just under 13 feet, you're out of the club.
You're out. But then you have another faction, equally credentialed, mind you, who insist the cutoff is 17 feet, or 5 meters.
That is a 4-foot gray area. That's a lot of biomass having an identity crisis right there.
It is. And it actually matters for things like, you know, zoning laws, conservation grants, how we count carbon sequestration. These definitions have real-world weight. But it gets even messier when you throw humans into the mix. Think about the art of bonsai.
Right. I've seen juniper trees that are 40, 50 years old, but they're only 8 inches tall.
Exactly. Biologically, that juniper has the potential to be a timber giant. Genetically, it is a tree. But environmentally, it has been constrained by a human hand. It has the lignin, the wood, the bark, all the components, but it lacks the height.
So what would the 13-foot rule person call it?
A shrub. They'd have to. But the bonsai master, who has tended to it for decades, knows in their soul that it's a tree.
So the label tree is a bit arbitrary. It's just a bucket we throw things into.
It's a convenient bucket. But if we want to understand what these things actually are, we have to stop looking at height and start looking at the internal engineering, the plumbing, really.
Okay, so this brings us to the system of order for the conservation of nature. How do they organize this mess?
They, and most modern botanists, rely on a system that looks at evolutionary lineage. It's all about who's related to whom. And right at the top of the family tree, there is a great divide. On one side, you have the spore trees.
Spores. That sounds ancient. Like Jurassic Park ancient.
It is prehistoric. We're talking about tree ferns. These things dominated the planet before dinosaurs really got going. They reproduce via spores, those little dust-like things usually on the underside of the leaves.
No seeds, no flowers.
None of that. It's a very old way of doing business. But today, they're a tiny minority. The vast majority of what you and I see when we look out the window are seed trees.
Okay.
And that group splits again into two real heavy hitters, gymnosperms and angiosperms.
I remember these terms from 10th grade biology, but let's refresh the definitions because they are crucial for understanding how the world looks today.
Sure. Gymnosperm comes from the Greek for naked seed.
Naked seed.
Exactly. These are your conifers, your pines, spruces, firs, also things like cycads, and the ginkgo tree. Their seeds aren't hidden inside a fruit. They are exposed, usually sitting on the scale of a cone.
So a pine cone is just a delivery system for naked seeds.
A very effective one. They rely largely on the wind for pollination. It's a brute force approach to reproduction. They just produce massive clouds of pollen and hope some of it lands in the right place.
Just blasting it into the air and hoping for the best.
Exactly. Which is why your car turns yellow every spring. That's gymnosperm desperation.
Uh-huh. Okay. And angiosperms.
Angiosperm means encased seed. These are the flowering trees. And this was a massive, massive evolutionary upgrade. They wrap their seeds inside a protective vessel. A fruit, a nut, a pod. Think of an apple or a peach.
Ah, so the fruit is the vessel.
Yes, and it allowed for much more complex dispersal strategies. Instead of just hoping the wind blows the right way, you can bribe an animal.
Bribe an animal.
Of course. You offer a tasty, sugary fruit, a bird or a mammal eats it, travels 5 miles away, and then deposits the seed with its own little packet of fertilizer.
It's the difference between sending a mass email and hiring a dedicated courier.
That is a perfect analogy. And within the angiosperms, these flowering plants, we hit one of my favorite controversies, the fake trees.
The fake trees. This feels like a conspiracy. What are we talking about here?
We are talking about the monocots, specifically palm trees.
No. Come on. A palm tree is the definition of a tree. It's a tall, straight trunk with a tuft of green on top. It's the ultimate lollipop.
Visually, yes. I get it. I hate to break it to anyone living in Miami or Los Angeles, but if you ask a strict wood anatomist, a palm tree is not a tree.
I don't know how to feel about this. Why not? What makes it a fake?
Mechanically, it's closer to a blade of grass than an oak tree. Palms are monocots. The mono refers to the single seed leaf, or cotyledon, that emerges when they sprout. Grass is a monocot. Lilies are monocots. Orchids are monocots.
So a palm tree is essentially a giant, woody blade of grass.
In a structural sense, pretty much, yes. Here is the absolute kicker.
Yeah.
They don't produce true wood.
Explain that, because if I run my car into a palm tree, it's not going to bend like grass. It's solid. I can assure you it's solid.
It's hard, but it's not wood in the botanical sense. A true tree, what we call a dicot, like an oak or a maple or a cherry, grows by adding concentric rings.
Right, you can count the rings to see how old it is.
Exactly. That's because of the cambium layer. It's this thin, creative zone just under the bark that generates new xylem, the wood on the inside, and new phloem, the inner bark on the outside. The tree gets wider every year. That's called secondary growth.
And palms don't do that.
No. Palms don't have a vascular cambium. They can't grow wider once the stem is formed. They just shoot up.
So how do they stand up? If it's not a solid pillar of wood, how does a coconut palm survive a hurricane? That seems impossible.
It is a marvel of engineering. It's a completely different solution to the same problem. Instead of a solid block of wood, imagine a bundle of thousands of steel cables packed into a matrix of hard foam.
Okay.
The cables are vascular bundles, these tough fibrous strands. This structure makes them incredibly flexible, not rigid. When a hurricane hits, an old oak tree might snap because it's too rigid. A palm tree just bends. It's designed to sway.
That's incredible. So it's strength through flexibility, not rigidity.
Precisely. And they have other tricks. You've seen those prop roots, right? On things like pandanus trees. They look like stilts coming out of the trunk.
Yeah, they look like they're propping the tree up.
That's exactly what they're doing. Since they can't thicken their trunk to support more weight as they grow, they often send out these adventitious roots from the stem to brace themselves. It's a totally different playbook. And if you look closely at their flowers, you'll see the parts, the petals. The stamens are usually in multiples of 3, which is another telltale sign of a monocot.
Wow. Okay, my world is a little shaken. Palm trees aren't trees. Before we move on from taxonomy, though, I have to ask about the primitive angiosperms. The notes mention trees like nutmeg and winter's bark. Primitive feels a bit derogatory for a tree that provides my favorite holiday spice.
Basil is the more polite scientific term. But primitive really captures the evolutionary timeline. These are, in essence, living fossils. They represent some of the earliest branches of the flowering plant family tree.
They were there right at the beginning.
Right after flowering plants appeared in the Cretaceous period, yep, they're like a window into the past.
So what makes them primitive? What's the old technology they're running on?
It's in the plumbing again.
Hmm.
It's all about water transport. Most modern hardwoods have vessels in their wood. These are basically big open pipes that can move water very, very efficiently from the roots to the leaves.
The latest high-speed internet cables.
A good way to put it. Some of these primitive trees, like winter's bark, lack those vessels entirely. Their wood is composed only of tracheids. These are much narrower, less efficient cells with closed ends. It's like they're running on old-school dial-up while the rest of the forest has fiber optic.
But they're still here.
They are. It proves that you don't always need the latest tech to survive. You just need to be good enough for your niche.
So we've established that tree is a messy category containing ancient spore bearers, naked seed conifers, flowering hardwoods, and giant grass imposters. But I want to pivot from what they are to what they did, because the source material makes a very bold claim. Humans essentially rode on the backs of trees to get to where we are today.
It is impossible to overstate this. I mean, the relationship between the genus Homo and the substance wood is the absolute foundation of our existence. We are the fire apes.
The fire apes. I like that. The notes cite evidence of controlled fires dating back 400,000 years.
Right at the Zucudian site near Beijing, they call it Dragon Bone Hill. And you have to remember, this wasn't Homo sapiens. This was Homo erectus.
Yeah.
These were our ancestors, not even fully us yet, but they already formed this critical technological partnership with wood.
And what did that partnership give them?
Everything. Warmth, first and foremost. The ability to survive cold nights and to expand out of Africa into colder climates. Protection, a ring of fire is the best predator deterrent there is. And then the big one, cooking.
This changed our biology.
It fundamentally rewired our evolution. This is the cooking hypothesis. Raw food, especially raw meat and tubers, is incredibly hard to digest. You spend a huge amount of calories just trying to break it down.
Right.
When you cook that food over a wood fire, you are essentially pre-digesting it. You're using an external energy source to break down tough fibers and complex proteins. You unlock more calories and nutrients with far less effort.
And that surplus energy has to go somewhere.
To the brain. The human brain is an energy hog. It's only about 2% of our body weight, but it consumes about 20% of our metabolic energy. It's a ridiculously expensive organ. We could only afford to grow such massive, complex brains because we outsourced our digestion to the fire.
So you can draw a straight line from the cellulose in a log to the complexity of the human mind.
A very direct line. Our intelligence was forged in the heat of a wood fire. And then you see it again with the Neanderthals.
Well, right, they survived the Ice Age.
They were living in Europe during the last glacial maximum. It was brutal.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no way a tropical adapted primate without thick fur survives that kind of environment without an external heat source. Wood fuel was their life support system.
So we burned trees to fuel our biological evolution, but then we started processing them to fuel our cultural evolution. And I want to talk about paper.
The medium of history, the vehicle for ideas.
It really is. But the description of the industrial paper-making process in the text it's violent.
Oh.
I think we have this romantic idea of artisanal paper-making, but the reality described is just incredibly intense.
It is a high-speed industrial dismantling of a living organism. We take a solid thing, a tree, and we have to break it down into its constituent cellulose fibers.
It starts with the chipper, which sounds friendly enough.
It's a machine with giant spinning blades that reduces entire logs to small wood chips in seconds. From there, those chips go into a digester. It's basically a giant high-pressure cooker.
Then they add steam and chemicals.
Harsh chemicals, usually sulfates, to dissolve the lignin. Lignin is the complex polymer that acts as the glue that holds the tree cells together. It gives wood its rigidity. To make paper, you have to get rid of the glue to free the fibers.
And this creates the soup.
A watery fiber soup, yes, a slurry. And then, and this is the part that always stuns me, that soup is sprayed in a thin, even layer onto a massive, moving wire mesh screen.
I mean, when you say moving.
It's not just sitting there. That screen is moving at 60 miles per hour.
95 kilometers per hour? That is highway speed. You're kidding me.
No. Imagine a slurry of tree guts flying down the highway. As it moves, Vacuums below the screen suck the water out, the fibers mat together through hydrogen bonds, and in a matter of seconds you have a continuous sheet of paper.
That's insane. And the scale mentioned rolls 16 feet wide, weighing tons.
It's a continuous river of cellulose. It really shows how we have completely commoditized this lying thing.
Yeah.
We've turned the silent infrastructure into a literal high-speed product.
But the sources also highlight that our relationship isn't purely utilitarian. It's not just about fuel and paper. There is a deep, almost resonant spiritual connection. We don't just use trees, we project ourselves onto them.
It makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Trees are one of the only other living things we encounter that look somewhat like us. They're vertical, standing upright, they have limbs, but they possess a longevity, a time scale that we can only dream of.
They connect generations.
They do. They bridge the gap between our fleeting mortal lives and something more eternal. They are witnesses.
The Bodhi tree is the prime example here, Ficus religiosa.
The tree of awakening. For Buddhists and Hindus, this isn't just a plant. It is a sacred site, the location of the ultimate spiritual transformation. The historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, is said to have attained enlightenment, or Bodhi, while meditating under the shelter of a bo tree.
The tree protected him during this process.
It did. And so the tree itself becomes a symbol of that enlightenment, of wisdom and compassion. There was a quote in the text attributed to the Buddha that I found incredibly moving.
I have it right here. The forest is a peculiar organism of unlimited kindness and benevolence that makes no demand for its sustenance and extends generously the products of its life activity.
And the kicker, the last line.
It affords protection to all beings, offering shade even to the axeman who destroys it.
Even to the axeman. That is the definition of unconditional love, or unconditional utility, depending on how cynical you are.
Right. It's a very benevolent, almost passive view of the forest. But I love that the notes contrast this with a much more visceral, painful myth from the North American subarctic peoples, the spruce myth.
Yes, this is a very different kind of story.
This one haunts me. It's set in the distant time, a mythological era when the boundary between humans and nature was much thinner, much more permeable.
The story goes that when a woman's husband was killed, she would be overcome with this frenzy of grief. She would pinch her own skin hard over and over, bruising it, hardening it. And in that moment of intense trauma and transformation, she would become a spruce tree.
And that explains the biology.
It explains the biology. It's a mythological origin story for the tree's appearance. If you look at the bark of a spruce tree, it's not smooth. It's rough, it's scaly, it has these little plate-like sections. It looks pinched.
Wow.
The myth ties that physical texture directly to the experience of human pain and loss. It suggests that the forest isn't just a resource. It's a community of ancestors. It's a repository of grief.
It completely changes how you walk through a forest. You're not just hiking through a bunch of plants, you're walking through a gallery of history and emotion.
Precisely. It imbues the landscape with meaning.
So we've covered biology, history, and spirit. Now I want to get into what you called the chemical factory. Because trees are sessile, they're standing still, they can't run away from things that want to eat them, so they have to fight back with chemistry.
Chemical warfare is the standard operating procedure in the forest. Every leaf, every piece of bark is a cocktail of compounds designed to deter, poison, or disrupt.
Let's start with the yew tree. Taxus. This feels like the ultimate double-edged sword from the sources.
The yew is a paradox wrapped in bark. Historically, in Europe, it was known as the tree of death. Yew wood is incredibly strong and elastic. It was the perfect material for the English longbow.
The weapon of mass destruction of the Middle Ages?
Absolutely. It could punch through armor, so it's an agent of death. But also, biologically, the tree itself is highly toxic.
All of it.
Almost all of it. The seeds, the foliage, the bark, it's all packed with a group of alkaloids called taxanes that, among other things, can stop the heart. Cattle will graze on it and just drop dead.
So, deadly weapon, deadly poison.
Yeah.
But then there's a twist.
A huge twist. In the late 20th century, scientists discovered that one of those toxic compounds, which they named paclitaxel, or Taxol for short, had a very specific effect on cells. It works by stopping cell division in its tracks.
Which is bad if you're a healthy cow, but very, very good if you have a tumor.
Exactly. Cancer is, at its core, uncontrolled cell division. Taxol freezes that process. It became a blockbuster chemotherapy drug, incredibly effective against ovarian, breast, and other cancers.
But there was a problem with the supply chain, right?
A massive problem. Initially, the only source was the bark of the Pacific yew, a slow-growing understory tree. And to get the drug, you had to strip the bark. Stripping the bark kills the tree.
So we were killing the cure to get the medicine?
We were. And we nearly drove the Pacific yew to extinction in the 1990s to meet demand. It was a huge conservation crisis. Thankfully, chemists eventually figured out how to synthesize it, or at least partially synthesize it, from the needles of common garden yews, which you can harvest sustainably. But it's a perfect example of how complex these tree factories are. A deadly poison and a life-saving cure wrapped in the same bark.
That's incredible. Then there's the neem tree. The notes call this a miracle tree, which usually makes me skeptical, but the list of applications is just insane.
Neem is the Swiss Army knife of the plant world. It's native to the Indian subcontinent and has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for thousands of years. It's used for everything: skin disorders, dental hygiene, fevers. But the most exciting application for us today is agricultural. It's a natural insecticide.
But not a normal insecticide that just kills everything. It's an anti-fedant. What does that mean?
Right, we're used to neurotoxins. You spray the bug, its nervous system shuts down, the bug twitches and dies. And usually, the farmer and the local water supply get a dose of that poison too. Neem is completely different. The main compound, azadirachtin, doesn't kill them instantly. It disrupts the insect's hormonal system. It makes them forget to eat.
It suppresses their appetite.
It suppresses feeding, and it also messes with their molting and metamorphosis. They don't grow, they don't breed, and the population eventually just dies out. But because it targets specific insect hormones, it's virtually non-toxic to mammals, birds, and beneficial insects like bees.
That is brilliant. It's such a subtle weapon. Speaking of subtle weapons that took over the world, coffee Arabica.
The engine of the modern world.
Yeah.
The most socially acceptable drug addiction on the planet.
And the source text outlines this incredible journey. It doesn't start on a massive plantation. It starts as a small understory shrub in the highlands of Ethiopia.
That's its native habitat. Legend says a goat herder named Kaldi noticed his goats getting frisky after eating the red berries. He tried them, and the rest is history. From Ethiopia, it hops the Red Sea to the Arabian Peninsula to Yemen around 600 CE.
And for a long time, it was a closely guarded secret of the Islamic world.
Very closely guarded. Exporting fertile beans was forbidden. But you can't keep a stimulant like that contained forever. It travels with traders and pilgrims.
It hits the Ottoman Empire and then Europe, first Vienna in 1555, then England in 1650. And this is where the social impact is fascinating. The coffee house.
The penny universities. This was a revolution. For the price of a penny, the cost of a cup of coffee, you could sit in a London coffee house all day and listen to the greatest minds of the age. Poets, politicians, scientists, merchants. It was the internet of the 17th century.
It literally fueled the Enlightenment.
You can make a very strong case for it. Think about it. For centuries, the main beverages in Europe were beer and wine, even for breakfast. They were safer than the water, but they're depressants. They make you sluggish. Suddenly, you switch to a stimulant that promotes focus, alertness, and rational thought. The modern industrial world was arguably built on the caffeine molecule produced by this little African tree.
And then the Dutch took it global.
The Dutch East India Company. They were masters of botanical espionage. They smuggled a plant out to Java in Indonesia, hence the nickname a cup of Java. From there, plants went to the botanical gardens in Amsterdam, then to Paris, and finally to the Americas via a single plant taken to the Caribbean. Almost all the coffee in Latin America descends from that one plant.
An incredible botanical world tour. There was one more utility tree that I found just charmingly specific. Cedar. Specifically, Cedrela odorata and its relationship with cigars.
This is a fantastic story of niche chemistry. So you have the H. Upmann banking family in the 1840s. They're shipping fine cigars from Havana to their board of directors in London.
But a cigar is basically a dried leaf. It's incredibly fragile and sensitive to humidity.
Exactly. If it gets too dry on the sea voyage, it becomes brittle and cracks. The flavor is ruined. If it gets too wet, it molds. They needed a shipping container that could regulate humidity. And it turns out Spanish cedar, which isn't actually a true cedar, botanically it's in the mahogany family, is perfect.
Why? What does it do?
The wood is hygroscopic. It absorbs excess moisture from the air and then slowly releases it when the air gets dry. It creates its own stable microclimate. It's a natural humidor.
Amazing.
Plus, the aromatic oils in the wood repel tobacco beetles, a major pest, and over time they impart that spicy, pleasant smell that we now associate with high-end cigars. It works so well that the box became as important as the product inside it. And now, Cedrela odorata is grown on plantations specifically for the packaging industry.
It's amazing how we find these incredibly specific chemical properties and then build entire industries around them.
Humans are very good at that.
Okay, we've been very serious so far. Biology, history, economics. I want to get weird. The oddity section of the notes is like a casting call for a sci-fi movie.
The plant world definitely has a sense of humor and a dark side.
Let's start with the boojum tree. Even the name sounds completely made up.
It essentially is. It was named by an explorer named Godfrey Sykes in 1923. He was looking at this bizarre, otherworldly plant in the Baja California desert, and it reminded him of a line from Lewis Carroll's nonsense poem, The Hunting of the Snark. The snark was boojum, you see, and the name just stuck.
The notes describe it as an upside-down green carrot.
That is a surprisingly accurate description. Imagine a giant, pale, tapered cone, maybe 50 feet tall, that looks like it was stuck point first into the ground. Then cover it with weird, bristly little spines and tiny leaves that only appear after it rains. It's a desert succulent. The whole trunk is designed to store massive amounts of water.
It looks completely alien, like it belongs on another planet.
It's a masterclass in desert survival. In a landscape that wants to kill you with heat and drought, you have to get creative.
Then there is the angel's trumpet, Broodmansia. This one sounds beautiful and serene.
It is stunningly beautiful. Huge, hanging, trumpet-shaped flowers that can be white, yellow, pink. And they have this intoxicating scent, like lemon and jasmine, that gets much stronger at night to attract moth pollinators. People love planting them in their gardens.
But I sense a but coming.
A very big but. It is a femme fatale. Every single part of that plant, the leaves, the flowers, the seeds, the roots, is packed with potent tropane alkaloids. Scopolamine, hyoscyamine.
Scopolamine, that's the zombie drug, right? The one used in horror stories.
That's the one. Ingesting it causes intense, terrifying hallucinations, paralysis, tachycardia, and very often death. It's incredibly dangerous. It's one of those plants that demands absolute respect. You'd not let your kids play Tea Party with angel's trumpet flowers.
Good to know. Okay, moving from the terrifying to the useful. We have the moringa. We talked about neem being a pharmacy. Moringa seems to be a whole grocery store.
It's often called the horseradish tree. The story goes that British colonists in India missed the spicy kick of horseradish with their roast beef, so they found that the roots of the local moringa tree, when grated, had a similar pungent taste.
But the text has a big, bold warning, not advisable.
Yeah, you should probably skip the root. It contains an alkaloid called spirichin, which can be toxic in large amounts. But the leaves are a genuine superfood. They are packed with vitamins A and C, calcium, potassium, and a surprising amount of protein.
And it grows in tough conditions.
It's incredibly drought-resistant and grows very fast. It's become a crucial crop for fighting malnutrition in many arid regions of Africa and Asia. It's a real workhorse.
I also saw something called the babako, the mountain papaya.
This is a fascinating one. It's what's known as a natural hybrid. It's a cross between two other wild papaya species that happen spontaneously in the Andes of Ecuador.
Okay, so it's a hybrid, like a mule.
Exactly like a mule. And just like a mule, it is sterile. It produces these large, delicious, seedless fruits, but it cannot reproduce on its own. It has no seeds.
So how does it, continue to exist?
It doesn't. Not on its own. It relies entirely on humans. The only way to propagate it is to take cuttings and clone it. It's a species that exists only because we decided it was tasty enough to keep alive.
It's a pet tree.
It's a domesticated plant in the purest sense, yeah.
And finally, just because the name is great, the foot fruit, Podocarpus.
Taxonomists can be very literal sometimes. Podo means foot in Greek, and carpus means fruit. If you look at the fruit, the seed sits on top of this fleshy, swollen, often brightly colored red base that looks surprisingly like a little foot.
Hey, that looks like a foot. Let's call it foot fruit.
Science isn't always poetic. Sometimes it's just descriptive.
So we have this incredible diversity. We have the infrastructure, the history, the chemistry, the weirdness, but we have to address the final section of the notes, the chainsaw in the room.
The vulnerability.
The fragility. There is a stark contrast mentioned in the material. A tree takes centuries to grow. It builds that complexity layer by layer, year by year. But with modern machinery, we can erase that history in minutes.
We have industrialized the process of destruction. It's not one person with an axe anymore. It's chainsaws, it's feller bunchers, these massive machines that can grab, cut, and stack a tree in under a minute. They can clear a forest faster than nature can possibly regenerate it. But the more insidious threat isn't the chainsaw. It's slower, and it's invisible. It's the climate.
Right. The notes talk about migration, which is a concept I really struggle with. Trees don't move. They have roots. They're stuck.
Individuals don't move. Populations move. It's a generational march. Think of it this way. A parent tree drops thousands of seeds. If it's getting too hot where the parent is, the seedlings that fall right at its base might die. But maybe a squirrel buried a seed 500 yards to the north, or a bird dropped 150 feet higher up the mountain where it's a little cooler.
And that one survives.
That one survives and grows into a tree. And its seeds then take the next step north. Over centuries, the entire range of the forest walks up the mountain or towards the poles.
The problem is the speed limit.
That is the entire problem. Trees can migrate, but they are incredibly slow. Their migration speed is tied to their reproductive cycle and dispersal methods. The climate is changing at a velocity that completely outpaces the biology of the forest. The last time the Earth warmed this much after the Ice Age, it took thousands of years for trees to recolonize. We are doing the equivalent warming in decades.
The text breaks this down into winners and losers, which is a pretty grim way to put it.
It is a grim forecast. The losers are the cold-adapted trees, the boreal conifers, spruce, fir, larch and temperate broadleaves like beech and birch. As it warms, their ideal climate zone moves north and up in elevation. But eventually you run out of mountain. There's nowhere left to go. They get pushed off the top.
And the winners?
The species that can handle heat and drought. The sources suggest things like eucalyptus from Australia, fan palms. We might see the temperate forests of Europe and North America being replaced by Mediterranean-style scrubland and palm savannas. The landscape of our grandchildren will likely look fundamentally different from the one we grew up in.
And it's not just the heat itself, it's what the heat brings with it. The notes call it a threat multiplier.
Yes. Warmer temperatures and milder winters are a huge problem for pest and disease control. Cold winters are nature's reset button. A deep, hard freeze kills off 90% of the overwintering insect larvae and fungal spores in the soil.
And without that reset,
The pests survive. They emerge earlier in the spring. They get in more breeding cycles in a single year. Their populations explode. And trees that are already stressed from heat and drought are much more vulnerable to attack.
the sources list some nasty ones. The sawfly.
A nasty little creature. The larvae look like caterpillars, and they feed in large groups. They can strip an entire pine grouch bare in a matter of days. A big infestation can kill a mature tree.
Weber moths.
These create those horror movie scenes you sometimes see. They spin these dense, white, silken webs over entire sections of foliage to protect themselves while they eat the leaves inside. You can see whole trees just draped in this ghostly silk being devoured from within.
And rust.
Rusts are fungal infections. You see them as these orange or brown, powdery crusts on the leaves in summer. They don't usually kill the tree outright, but they weaken it significantly. They reduce its ability to photosynthesize, making it susceptible to everything else. It's death by 1,000 cuts.
It feels bleak. It really does. But the sources end on a note about the role of trees in our more immediate environment. In our cities. The green lungs.
This is where we can actually do something, where our actions have a direct and immediate impact. Urban trees aren't just decoration. They are functioning, vital infrastructure.
More than just shade.
So much more. A large tree captures carbon, of course, but on a local level, it physically catches particulate matter, soot, smog, and dust from traffic on its leaves. Rain washes it to the ground. It cools the air through transpiration, fighting the urban heat island effect. It absorbs stormwater, reducing runoff. It's a silent, hardworking city employee.
And the mental health aspect. The text mentions the philosophy behind Japanese gardens.
It's about connecting to natural rhythms. In a city, everything is static. Concrete doesn't change with the seasons. A glass skyscraper looks the same in July as does in January, but a tree. It buds in spring, it creates deep, lush shade in summer, it bursts into gold and red in the fall, and it reveals its beautiful skeletal structure in winter. It connects us to the passage of time. It grounds us.
So after all of this, what is the takeaway here? We've traveled from the cellular structure of a monocot to the global economy of coffee, from the ancient fires of Homo erectus to the future of climate migration. Where does that leave us?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we need to permanently retire that green wallpaper idea. Trees are not infinite. They are not a passive, static resource. They are active, complex participants in our world, and frankly, they are under siege.
And so sustainable management becomes the watchword? It's not just a nice idea anymore.
It's existential. The sources make this crystal clear. If we don't manage forests, sustainably balancing harvest with regeneration, respecting the biological timelines, and planning for a changing climate, certain types of forestry and the ecosystems they support will simply vanish. We can't just be miners of wood. We have to become gardeners and cultivators of forests.
We have to think on their timeline, not ours. We operate on fiscal quarters and election cycles. They operate on centuries.
That's it exactly. Planting an oak tree is an act of intergenerational optimism. You're doing it for your grandchildren, knowing you'll never see it reach its full majesty.
I want to circle back to where we started our little tour of myths. That spruce tree myth, the woman pinching her own skin in grief, becoming the rough bark of the tree.
It's such a potent image. It stays with you.
It blurs the line, doesn't it? It says that we are made of the same stuff. Our human story is written in their growth rings, and their future is now being written in our actions.
We are locked in a symbiotic loop. We breathe out the carbon dioxide they breathe in. We burn what they build from sunlight. We are, at a fundamental level, inseparable.
So here is my challenge to you, the listener. The next time you walk out your door, whether you're passing a scrawny little street tree in Brooklyn or a massive ancient oak in a pasture, don't just gloss over it. Stop for a second. Look at it.
Really look at it. Notice the texture of the bark, the shape of the leaves.
And ask yourself a few questions. What is this machine doing right now? Is it a migrant, the northernmost outpost of its species, trying to move north? Is it a medicine chest full of unrefined drugs we haven't discovered yet? Is it a relic of the Ice Age, just holding on to a patch of cool soil?
Or is it a silent witness, standing there offering shade to whoever stands beneath it, even, and especially, the axeman?
Unpack the world around you. Break the plant blindness. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.